Assalamu Alaikum everyone, I'm Ahmed Bukar and welcome back. So in this tutorial we're gonna look at for loops and while. So I'm gonna open my PyCharm ID and now I'm gonna give you a quick introduction of what for loops and while loops are. Now first of all, for loops. For loops are just like conditions, if else statements, those conditions which uh, does something as long as our condition is not true. I know this is very mouthful, I can't even explain it. So let me just explain using this. So to start with for loops, we're gonna type for I in uh, okay. So here now in modern times, let's say you want I to be equals to 0. I had this experiment, I forgot it. For so now in after for loop we're gonna type for and our condition here will be our condition, but this doesn't work in Python. I'm just here to explain you. For I is smaller than 10, for I smaller than 10. Now what this would do is that the for loop would check if I is smaller than 10. Now if I is smaller than 10, uh, now, if I is smaller than 10, it would do whatever we want it to do in the next space. But if I is equal to 10, it would do nothing. We can just plus plus equals to 1. We can just add a 1 so that every time this for loop runs. So let me just tell you one more thing. When you complete or your actions inside of one for loop, it returns again to the line where the for loop starts and checks the condition. If the condition is false, for the for loop would run only if the condition is false, if statement. Unlike if statement. So it's a bad code. We don't use this over here. So we're gonna type in for I. I is a something everyone uses. It's a common type of variable used as numbers. You can name it index. For I in. Now in is a just a syntax used in for Python. So now I'm gonna introduce you a method in for loops that's called range. Now range is a method that is used to create a list or it's used to create a list. Now I'm just gonna do a for over here and print our I. When I run my code, it produces my code 0, 1, 2, 3. Now let me tell you what range for actually is. I'm gonna remove all of this. Print range 1. So my range is 1 and I get my value range 0 and 1. If I do this like 7, I get, I think this is not dot, let me just store this in a variable. We ran. Actually the range method returns us a list. Now why isn't returning us a list? I don't know, but Let me just show you for example in the for loop for I in. Now let us create a list string number 3. Now I'm gonna print out my I. Print out my I. So we're gonna run this and look how our numbers were printed, because the range method in for loops is similar to creating list. It just returns a list of numbers, how many numbers we wanted, but it starts from 0 and a disadvantage. And this is the syntax for loop. Now in other programming languages you might use conditions in for loops, but Python is easy. It's the world's most easiest programming language. That's what professional says. So we can use the range, and we can also nest for loop. For example, I'm just gonna use the range method over here. Range 5 for let's wait. And now I wanted to tell you one thing. When we use a for loop, we create a variable inside of our for loop. A variable inside of our for loop. So this I is a variable. It was created only in this in the first line. It was created in the first line inside of for loop. So that is why how we would print this I. For let's create a variable called a in range 10. That means, oh, this is going to be bad. I plus a. This is just going to add those two numbers. Not gonna do this at all. Oh, we need to intend these both I and I want to print. So I print it. Oh, I didn't use a colon. You have to use correct statement. So wow, long thing. So here we have 0. The first, so for first we had 0. Then we had again 0 for A. Then 0 Y, because it was calling I twice. You can do this over here so that we don't have any confusion. First it was I was 0, then A was 0. Then I became 1 and A became 1. Then what is going on here? Oh yes, we have for A we have range 2, means it's only 0 and 1. It returns back to 0, 1, and so on. So this is our for loop. We can also print out like lists, objects inside of lists. Now I'm just gonna show you a list using my name, using the names we used before, and bam. So I'm just gonna quick print out my list, and you see we have our list along with the quotes, commas, and the bracket and our square bracket. Now what if we don't want it? Now what? Now this is that you shouldn't code like very much like this. It isn't good for, you can say, clients or something else. So you can use for loops to print out each object in our list down to our just you'll get that in a moment. So I'm just gonna rename my variable items, name items, and you can just rename. So items for item, we're gonna create a new variable called item inside of items. Items, and items is a list. So I'm gonna print item. So what this will do is print out our list, the objects inside of our list one by one. So let me just show you what it did. Now, when Python ran the code, it first came upon items. It created a list object. Then it went for the for loop. It saw that the for loop has a variable, created a variable called item. So it stored that item variable inside of our RAM. That's how Python runs, a programming language, and it chooses the first item inside of the items list for items. Now and this becomes a string object. This item becomes a string object, and this is a list of strings of string. Yes, this is a list of strings, and it picks up the first value from our list and prints them and prints it out for us. Now it returns back to our for loop and checks for the other item, prints that out, the other prints that out, and the other prints that out, and then again when it comes to the point that there are no more objects to be printed, it breaks the for loop itself. So see, we get the result over here. We can also use this for tuples as well as dictionary. I don't know about dictionary, but you can play around with that. For now, so very long video just with for loop. So now we're gonna look at while loops. Now while loops are similar to for loops, but the difference is that they use conditions. For loops don't use conditions. I'm sorry, I messed up somewhat over here there. So while loops use conditions similar to if statements, but they use conditions. A while loop has conditions if the as long as the condition is not true. As long as the condition is not true, as long as the condition is not true, uh, whatever we provide the while loop to do, it would just keep on doing that as long as the condition is not right mountain. While let me just create a variable called I equals to 30. Let's say I is equal to 30. I'm gonna name a while loop. I while I is greater than 30, as long as I is, oh wait, let me just, now as long as I is smaller than 30, we're gonna bring I as well as add one in. So now we get our bunch of. So first the I was 0, while I was 0 means while I was smaller than 30 is true. Yes, it's true. So while as long as a condition is true, the while loop does what we wanted to do in this bunch of code, single call. Now we printed I the first time we printed I was 0, then we added I with a 1, and I was globally added to 1, and that became 1. It so and so it was still less than 30. Wasn't good. So we printed our I and added another one. It became 2, and so on until it reached 29, which stated that it's smaller than 30. If we use the smaller than or equal to sign, we get the 30 because it uh, our condition could also be 30. But I was all uh, but after I became 31, it stated that it's false and it stopped the loop. The loop. So the quick introduction of while loop can use whatever kind of conditions you want. Now, just like we did previously, I'm gonna use the input method we use to do. Uh, okay, so I'm just creating a name, variable called name, and provide it in input, and asking what is your name? What is your name? So we're gonna set a condition as long as name is equal to. Oh, I don't want this. We can use a not logical operator. It would just return a false instead of a true. As long as the name is Ahmed, uh, input name equals to input wrong name, wrong name, wrong name, type in again. I'm gonna run my code. I'm gonna wrong name, type in again, type in again, full value for name, and wrong name type in again. So that's why we use not logical operator, because the name, if as long as our name is true, it would do the actions we want it to do over here. But as long as it's not true, it would print wrong entirely and assign new values to our assign new value to our variable called name. So that I'm gonna get Ahmed, and my code ends. It exits. So this is how while loops and for loops work, and this is it. Very much the basics. So this is the end of the tutorial. Meet you guys in the next one.